Hello and welcome to another episode of the Best You interview series. It's Gary here again. Thank you very, very much as always for taking the time to join me today. And today I'm joined by educator, founder, author and professional coach Dr. Benjamin Ritter, who I've been given permission to call Ben from this point forward. So I'm not being rude, I promise. Who is here to discuss his experiences, thoughts and processes around his best-selling book, Becoming Fearless. And I'm really, really looking forward to this topic. Ben is the founder of Live for Yourself Consulting, whose sole purpose is guiding leaders to create a career they love and create organisations that people can fall in love with. At Live for Yourself Consulting, they specialise in helping values-driven and impact-focused leaders gain clarity, confidence and control over their career paths. Ben is a certified international leadership and career coach, senior talent management consultant and host of two podcasts, The Executive and Live Fearlessly. Having coached over 500 leaders worldwide for some household name brands such as Amazon, DoorDash and Pinterest, among others, Ben's mission is to guide leaders to become the leader of their own career, live fearlessly and create a career and life that they love. He's also the author, as I mentioned, of the award-winning and Amazon best-selling book, Becoming Fearless, which is going to be the crux of our conversation today. Ben, thanks a million for joining me today.
A million. I'll take it. Thanks a trillion. Thanks a billion. I've been listening to a lot of finance stuff lately, so I feel like I need to up my numbers now. So now I'm going to say thanks a billion. Thanks the amount of interest on our deficit in the United States.
I love it. Do you know what the funny thing is? It's just a thing that I've said forever and ever and ever. And now and again, when I type it, I'll say it on email too. And when I type it to people, sometimes I get this odd response back where they're not quite 100% sure what to say in terms of you're welcome or no problem or you got it or whatever. So I don't know if there is a quantification challenge of some description there. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, back to your very, very interesting journey. If anyone, we will put, of course, contact details on the show notes for this episode, and you'll get to see a bit more about Ben's background. But you have had a very, very interesting journey thus far in your life and in your career, with a varied background that has got you to this particular spot. What would you say were the pivotal moments for you that sparked your interest in helping other people and helping educate other people and using coaching to farm out that help that you're striving for?
Yeah, I'm happy to go into the origin story. I am very curious. This is actually one of the skills and strengths that lends itself to us being successful coaches. If we get a chance, I want to hear about where this thanks a million came from, because I think that our slogans, our taglines for the ends of emails, when we end things, when we start things, say a lot about our values and who we are and what we really hold close. Like mine is now, it wasn't always, it was all the best. Now it's cheering you on. And it was a big shift. When I shifted from all the best to cheering you on, it was like this momentous, it was a milestone moment that I think is important to who I am. But my life early on, before this fearlessness and this journey towards clarity, confidence, and control, to the point where I can say I am fearless, was filled with a lot of fear. It was filled with a lot of disappointment and failure, despite resilient and hard work. Especially in my career, which is where I focus. So the first job I ever wanted to do was it's kind of funny, people kind of laugh at it, I wanted to be a professional soccer player. And it's not something you do lightly.
That's my sport.
What was that?
Yeah, that's my passion, yeah.
Yeah, it's my sport. It's not my knees' sport anymore, but I'm trying to make them love it again. But when you want to become an athlete, a little different than wanting to become like a marketing consultant. I mean, it's kind of similar to probably wanting to be an astronaut or wanting to be a paleontologist or something, where you have to dedicate all your time to it because the competition is intense. Yeah. And at least I knew that about work. I knew that you had to dedicate all your time to it. The problem is I over-dedicated my time to it. And so I lost sight of being human. I lost sight of how to be social, how to have friends, balance, all the things. And so when all of yourself is invested in one thing, and nothing else that's important to living your life. And when you lose that thing, you lose your life. So you really have no idea who you are, where you're supposed to go. You have no sense of esteem, self-confidence. You have no sources of validation. You have no friends for support to lean on, etc. So that was a really difficult moment. The other areas that I was interested in terms of my career, I wanted to be a nutritionist. I wanted to go into dietetics because I thought, well, if I can't do soccer, or I'm passionate about soccer, or I'm passionate about health and wellness, let's do that. They canceled my major about halfway, three-fourths through the program. So that was disappointing. And then out of school, I thought I wanted to start a company, a food business that kind of merged health and wellness and food and nutrition, and didn't have the confidence and didn't really to be able to launch that. So that was kind of a disappointing pullback from my own, but that was self-inflicted. Actually, all of our milestones are self-inflicted because we run our life. And then I was in grad school studying health policy. I learned that, okay, if I can't do the thing that I want to do to impact health, and changing behavior is really hard, I'll change policy to make it so we're forcing people to change behavior. And I worked in that field for a little bit, and while I was in grad school, and a little bit out. And then they lost funding, worked for the state, and so they cut the job. And then for 2.5 years, it was really difficult. I had 4 different job offers, all in policy and health, that all gave me contracts, that all gave me start dates, that then canceled the jobs right before I started. So that was just like, yay, no, yay, no, yay, no. Really difficult moments. And so then I stumbled into a job in healthcare. And I say stumbled, I was working as a bartender to pay my way. I worked a lot of odd jobs. I worked music festivals. I handed out flyers on street corners. Eventually, I networked into a job in a hospital, which, by the way, didn't hire me the year before because they found out I was bartending to pay my bills. So I've like learned over the years that your work is not supposed to work out. And so I'm in this job in healthcare, basically a victim of my own negative mentality, hating my job, not showing up in a way with pride, but still doing good work because I'm supposed to do good work. So getting promoted, being seen as a high achiever, even though I was a completely disengaged employee. And then surrounded though also by really toxic leaders. People were crying around me on a daily basis. I had coworkers that were really competitive and negative. And it wasn't a good place to be. We had 2 different CEOs. I had 4 different bosses in my first 2 years. We went through 2 different acquisitions. And lo and behold, I have 1 foot out the door the entire time. I'm kind of getting ready to leave. And then they not only did they promote me, they put me in a leadership development program. So I am completely disengaged. I believe work is not supposed to work out. And now I'm like, well, I should stay here anyways. I have 16 months of leadership training, that at least might benefit my career because it hasn't worked out so far. And then two really big things happen. I get paired up with the person that's running all our talent development, leadership development across all 13 hospitals. He was incredible. And that space that he created through our coaching sessions and just through also me getting to a point where I'm like, this is terrible. I shouldn't be living like this anymore. I shouldn't hate my job every single day. Those conversations built an awareness for me that one day when I was walking to work, I looked around in my kind of negative headspace with a mountain on my shoulders that I put there, being really dreadful, not excited for the day. I looked around and I was able to see that same feeling in other people. And it was like I was seeing myself and I was like, oh, look at these zombies walking into work. Oh, their life sucks. And I was like, wait a second. Ooh, shoot. my life sucks. And I'm doing this to myself. And so that was a really pivotal moment for me to say, okay, well, shoot, if I do have a little bit of control over my career and I have confidence in myself now, well, what do I want to do? What clarity do I want to create? And then how do I impact my environment to make that happen? And that was the start of my journey towards leadership, talent development, organizational development, and coaching.
Wow, a thing that really resonates with me for everything that you said there, Ben, was you didn't blame one other factor or one other thing through that whole journey. This was all Ben's doing, Ben's decisions, Ben's journey, Ben's experiences, and ultimately Ben's actions to take him forward. How intentional was that?
Yeah, self-leadership, which is the theme of how I work with clients, has been a theme throughout my life. The problem is I didn't always do it the right way. Like with soccer, I'm like, I'm going to make this happen. And so gave myself the responsibility. Now, I wish I realized the importance of confidence. It wasn't just showing up and practicing. It wasn't just knowing your goal. It was also believing in yourself to be able to achieve it, because my mindset really held me back. And then when I realized finally that I can say this with like almost 100% confidence. If I was confident when I was younger, I would be a professional soccer player right now, and I probably wouldn't be having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
Because there were moments of flow that happened when I was able to be my best champion that made me better than anyone else on the field, that made me incredible. And so I learned that my mindset was holding me back. So then I started studying my mindset. And I'm like, oh, it wasn't my coach that was holding me back. I wasn't actually playing good enough. And yes, maybe I was angry that I wasn't getting the right chance. And the school canceled my major. It's not their fault for canceling my major. I can go transfer to another university if I want to. The government cutting funding, that just created a sense of fear. It's like, okay, how do I get the most out of this situation now before they cut my job? And then what do I want to do next? And so I think self-leadership, this personal resilience, has been a part of my life. The problem, though, too, which took me a while to notice, is if you're unhappy, that's also your fault. And that took me some time to figure out. Like, if you're the victim, if you're going into work, not to work, you're wasting your time in your day. Like, and so I almost didn't have full control over my time, even though I kind of blamed myself for the situations and empowered myself to believe that, like, oh, like, okay, so then what do I want to do next? Like, so it's a really interesting mentality to say, I am responsible, but I don't realize how responsible I am for even right now in this moment.
Yeah. And you emphasize the kind of zombie mentality as you're walking to work and you're observing that type and style of certainly physical manifestation of how you were feeling at the time. Would you say that was one of the key moments where you thought, stop, this is almost a mirror up against me and I don't like what I see?
Yeah, I was walking to work because I could walk to work then. It was in office.
Yeah.
I have to preface that now, which is funny. I was in office, walking to work, and I looked around and it was just a drag. I was looking around at everybody and they seemed unhappy and I was unhappy. And it was literally like someone held up a bunch of mirrors and I said, work shouldn't be like this. Wait, work is like this for me. It doesn't have to be like this. What should it be like?
Yeah.
And then when I had that question, I had the opportunity to answer it. I just didn't really realize how much time I was wasting because I kind of felt almost like work wasn't supposed to be good. I had a lot of experiences where work was to pay the bills. You do your job, you get it done. And that's what I was doing. The problem is a lot of my odd jobs in the past were short time frames. So I can go into work, find a way to have fun. And even if I wasn't really having fun for a couple hours, that was okay. It wasn't going to be gone in a week. It was gone in 2 weeks. I was going to be able to maybe meet some people and move on. This full-time jobs are different. You're there and that's the majority of your day. And yes, you collect your paycheck, but do you really want to go in each and every single day unhappy, without a plan, without skills that you're trying to learn, without challenge, without relationships that you're enjoying?
Yeah.
And then to not give your control away to how you can actually kind of create an environment that really does suit you each and every single day, because you have to go back to it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of it, based on my experiences, has been intention, genuine intention about how much you believe you matter in terms of that. Because I've had similar experiences, personal experiences for myself, where I hated my job, and I always say it was a blessing because it was essentially my first job after I left high school. And I was a painter. I was like a house painter and wallpaper hanger and such like that. And I just at the time I thought, oh man, what was I doing? Because I didn't try hard in school because I could be a painter and I don't need to have any qualifications to be a painter. Back home in Scotland, you don't graduate per se. You just leave. You just walk out and then you've got what you've got. And at the time, very difficult to do between the ages of 16 and 20. And in hindsight, with the blessing of time, afterwards, it really was a genuine blessing in terms of I'm never, ever, ever doing that again. I'm never getting myself into a situation like that again. I'm gonna do the best I can to avoid that. And I think certainly in people that I coach and have coached over time is that they haven't set that intention. They haven't sat down and said, what do I want my experience to be in terms of this particular role, in terms of this particular month, week, day? morning, afternoon. And when you don't do that, you're going to get what you get. And a lot of people are kind of like, yeah, but, and they're pointing and they're doing a whole bunch of things, that gives opportunity to say these external influences and factors are genuinely holding me back. Yes, that could be the case. You still get to set your intention and how you're going to act and react to those things that are coming in for you as you move forward.
Yeah, intention is so powerful. And think about this. Okay, you're dropped on an island and you have to set the commitment. Like, do you want to give up? Do you want to live on this island? Do you want to get home? Like, what's your goal?
Yeah.
That's the thing you're going to work towards. And there's motivations behind that. Like, you have values that tend to feed into your goals. And then you look in front of you and you go, oh, I have a coconut. I have a piece of string. I have maybe a volleyball, because that movie with Tom Hanks, I forgot what
Yeah.
it's called. And I don't know, something
Castaway.
else, like maybe you have I'm trying to think of another item. Give me an item, Gary.
Has to be a watermelon.
A watermelon. Okay, so we have a lot of food, which is good because you're on an
Yeah.
island. Maybe there's a tree somewhere. And so those are the tools you have in front of you. And let's say you have nothing else. And so you have this intention. You're going to set the intention maybe to live on the island because you have food. Why not? And your values are because you've always wanted to be, you love solitude. Wonderful. But now you have these tools in front of you. You don't have anything else. You can either sit there and complain that you only have a watermelon and a coconut and a piece of string or something, or you can try to figure out how to use those tools to reach your goal. And too many people are sitting and complaining. And not just complaining, though. Too many people are sitting in fear. If I ask my manager for that promotion, I'm going to lose my job, and what am I going to do and live on the street? If I speak up in this meeting, people are going to think I'm dumb, and they're going to realize that I'm a failure, that I shouldn't be here, and I'll lose my job, and I'll live on the street. Like, generally, it's like you have all these fears that keep you in inaction, or you haven't set the intention, haven't set the commitment enough. Like, this is a really interesting word, commitment, because intention it's such a strong belief in something you want to achieve that everything else falls to the wayside.
Hmm.
And this is actually how we combat fear in a large way. If we have a commitment no matter what, if we have an intention no matter what, fear is information to help us achieve our goal.
Hmm.
And so now all of a sudden I'm on this island and I go, well, I want to live here. So I might be afraid of, actually, if you want to live on an island, what would you be afraid of? Snakes. Maybe I'm afraid of snakes. Okay, great. So I'm afraid of snakes. So instead of just sitting here being really afraid of snakes, I'm going to dig a moat, maybe. Like, what are snakes afraid of? Okay, you get the idea, Gary. But
Yeah, yeah.
I'm going to distract them with mice or something. But you're going to take action to combat your fear instead of sit in fear. That's where intention and commitment becomes such an important aspect of life. And those are sourced from generally our goals and our values.
Yeah, and it's a great segue because obviously the main context of the conversation today is the book and fear and fearlessness in and of itself. When would you say was the first time that you started to, what can I say, be open with the fact that fear was a major factor in your life, or realize that fear was a major factor? Because in my experience, some people will use almost any other word other than fear to describe what's holding them back, how they're feeling, why they're taking certain actions. There seems to be a little bit of a stigma for some around that word. How did that manifest itself for you?
I feel like I was pretty lucky when I was young to have failed in soccer the way that I did, because it made me face a lot of the issues that I now have to help people solve.
Mm.
And it was at a younger age. And it was something that I took very seriously. And it was very difficult at the time, but I thank it, because I was afraid of not being good enough
Right.
with soccer and I think with relationships. And when I realized that soccer wasn't the path forward, and that my fear of not being good enough was the reason why I wasn't good enough, like literally, the fear of not being good enough is the reason why you're not good enough, that changed my world. And so I spent probably 4 or 5 years just studying about the self and how that self can engage with the world around them. So relationships, influence, persuasion, and did everything and anything I could to make myself uncomfortable and to face my fears. And I was talking with someone the other day, and they're like, "Man, how long would it take me to learn about myself or relationships?" And I said, "Well, probably a lifetime." But other than that, I spent 4 or 5 years literally dedicating all of my free time to it. Every book, every podcast, every video, I would journal about it. I would go out, do little mini tests.
Yeah.
And that was my master class. And I think I learned a lot in about a year or two. I learned enough to be happy. And then I spent the rest of the time evolving and growing into who I want to be. And so not long, but if you dedicate your time to it. And the biggest issue I see people face when it comes to building confidence or struggling with confidence or struggling with clarity is they want it yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's a skill that you build over a lifetime.
Yeah.
And so I faced being afraid of being rejected through my professional pursuits and through relationships at a younger age. And because of that, I don't fear anything. I know I can always make money, which is when it comes to career, generally the fear is I'm going to not have money and not be able to pay my way. Well, go work odd jobs. Like go be a cashier, go become a bartender, go become a painter. Learn that you can do a trade or go and get a paycheck no matter what. And some people, I've worked with executives and they're like, "What do you mean? What are you talking about? I want to." It's like, no, you have to prove that you can make money outside of your 9 to 5, that your profession and what you've currently created, because it's just a sense of safety. The other piece is go get rejected by 100 people in a day. Go do awkward things. Like not in any way negative towards another person, but be awkward. Why? Because when you see that you can survive, you're going to be okay. You're going to wake up tomorrow and no one's going to know who you are. It is freeing.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, I can honestly say that fear is just information on the path to your greatness and the life that you want.
Yeah. And some people just aren't comfortable with that, potential future discomfort that they would invariably have to endure. It's really interesting talking about that mindset of I will always be able to do something to support my family, my lifestyle, my life in general. I was telling this story recently to a class where I get called late into an interview, was interviewing a fellow for a job, and there was a 2 year gap on his CV, on his resume. And as the other person's kind of doing the preamble, I'm kind of sifting through quite quickly through his document. And then one of the questions I asked was, can you tell me about the 2 year gap there? That's quite unusual to see that. And he starts kind of shifting in his chair and, getting a little bit coffee and nervous. And I says, right, now you've got me intrigued, man. Like I'm starting to think that you were in jail, and it was a kind of break the ice type moment because I said it with a little bit of, hilarity, like I just said there. And he's like, no, 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 no. I just didn't want to say to anyone that I had to go and work at Walmart for 2 years because I lost my previous job. There was a telecom crash of some description in his industry, and he had to take that job to support his family. And I says, why would you not say that? Why would you, like, what is wrong with that? And how do you think we would react to that? My reaction is you will do anything you need to do to get the job done being supporting your family for right now, and there is nothing beneath you. You will do what you need to do. And seeing a big gap there, I just made up a story that was less than complimentary about what you were doing for that 2 years. So you maybe want to think about that. So that sort of idea of literally what's the worst that would have to happen? The worst that would have to happen is I would be, and no disrespect to any Walmart greeters or cashiers or bartenders or anything, I would have to do a job that's maybe completely different than my career trajectory or my desires or, anything that maybe my peer group would think is acceptable or any other story you want to make up. I have skills and abilities that will be valuable to someone somewhere. So I emphasize that, Ben, because I think it's a fabulous point that I imagine every single person who's either watching or listening to this will have those sets of skills. So if the fear of not being able to generate any income whatsoever is part of that, hopefully this in some way helps. So then in terms of fearlessness, how do you define fearlessness in terms of your work with the leaders that you work with?
Yeah. So if fear, by the way, I love that story. And Walmart managers, other than just like cashiers and such, make an incredible amount of money. and Walmart has a really good talent development program. And so if you ever thought about going into operations or store management, wow, they pay really well. And I know that they pay probably more in stores where they have a hard time getting good help. That's a good living. Just like trade, you have to go to class, you don't have to pay for it. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
Retail operation management, really tough job, long hours, really difficult dealing with people all the time, but it's, whew, a good, okay. Anyways, moving on. Like your job doesn't have to be sitting in front of a computer all day.
Yeah.
There are many other ways to make money, and knowing that you can make that money is such a safety net, other than just saving and putting money away, etc. Not living the golden handcuffs and living paycheck to paycheck, etc. So, in terms of fearlessness, so fear is defined as information. So we're going to take away the fear, the negative connotation to the word, and just say that it's information from your environment based on past programming, which is what it is. And generally it's negative because we get caught in a fear cycle, which amplifies it and magnifies it. Then fearlessness is being able to actually interpret fear as information and prevent the negative magnification spiral that comes from interpreting it as something bad. So I see this fear, I feel this fear, I have a thought, I have a feeling, and then it magnifies because I think it's negative. And so instead of actually seeing it as something that's bad, I go, oh, information, process it. How can I interpret this to best serve my values and my goals? That's fearlessness. Mm-hmm. So for example, you could say, tiger. I feel fear. Okay, hold on a second. Is it close to me? Can it attack me? Is it in a cage? What is it? Okay. But family member is closer to the tiger. What are my goals? Help my family member survive, to protect them. Okay, so I choose an action. Do I run away? Do I fight? Do I stand? Etc. Human relationships. I'm in the dating market. I see someone that I'm attracted to. I feel fear. Oh, that's because that person's attractive. That's good information to have. That fear is a good stimulation on action. I'm going to go say hi. Speaking up in a meeting, I feel fear. My senior leader is there. Oh, they said something I disagree with. I'm afraid that disagreeing with my leader is going to make me look bad. Oh, but I also think disagreeing with my leader could potentially make me stand out and put the spotlight on me. What should I do in this situation based on my goals? Am I interested in a promotion this year? And so we're interpreting information as a way to serve ourselves.
Yeah. And one of the things that I was really thinking about in preparation for our conversation today was conscience versus subconscious, and how, kind of like I said earlier, where people would maybe much rather use any other word to describe their actions or how they're feeling. Do you see conscious and subconscious really playing a part where someone would explain away a certain type and style of behavior and not really look to to analyze or acknowledge and analyze the information that's obviously being presented to them? How does that go typically?
I may not answer your question, so direct me back to it if I don't answer it. Because what came up for me when you were sharing the subconscious conscious piece was the goal of coaching, the goal of personal development that impacts our professional development. Because you see this with like trainings on how to give feedback and how to coach and how to delegate, how to manage conflict ridden situations at work even, is to build the pause. You build the pause. There's a power to the pause. So if you have a reaction that you're not in control of, your pause isn't large enough. Yeah. Unless you're an athlete in a state of flow, unless you're doing something that requires you to just let yourself go and to not hesitate, that kind of skill, or creative, an artist, you need to have a pause, because your pause allows you then to be intentional about those actions specifically. And that's where this idea of subconscious conscious comes into play. Well, I think it's less about that. It's more about, am I aware of and in control of my actions? Am I aligning them to my goals and to my values? And that requires space. That requires time. It generally is not automatic.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're right. And I think one of the things went then to add on to that, possibly prior to, is to create that awareness that you do need that pause, that you do need to create. I've heard it recently described as the space between stimulus and response, and it has to be appropriate to the situation that you're facing. But that level of awareness an intentionality, to use that word again, to go back in and say in preparation, these things might happen in this particular situation, circumstance, or event. How would I like that pause to look for me? How would I like to be my best self in terms of my reaction for anything that's emergent that comes up in and of the moment? How do I immediately acknowledge and then create that space while feeling the feels that are coming up at that particular time as well? What would you say, if there is such a thing, would be the most common fears that leaders are experiencing in the workplace today?
The fear of judgment, basically. It can go in a lot of different ways. So the most common fear within the workplace is judgment, and judgment leads to poor outcomes. So either losing your job or being thought of in a negative way. Generally, it all comes down to losing your job or conflict. And so judgment can come from speaking up, can become from asking your manager for time or trying to manage up, asking for a promotion. It can come from giving someone feedback or not giving someone feedback. It can come from the quality of your work. So we see a lot of perfectionism or even procrastination. Both of those tend to have the same stimulus, which is I'm afraid of being judged.
Right.
And it holds us back. I mean, the whole section of the book on becoming fearless is really about how to kind of manage that fear of being judged or losing your job, or being kind of outcasted within the work environment, and how to stay committed to your goals.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking there as you were chatting about some of the work that I've done with clients where, and it's not been specific around fear, but just more manifestation of less than positive outcomes. And sometimes we would kind of have a struggle where I would say, essentially, tell me the worst that would happen. And there would be some sort of, emotional response to saying, well, this and that and that and that and that. But no, but let's sit down and literally talk about it and write it down. If you were to, say, for example, lose your job, how would that feel? And delving in a wee bit more, and what practically would that mean in terms of your daily routine? What opportunities might it open up? And just looking at the various different facets. And then when you start to see things in writing, you get to that spot where it's not quite as scary as you first thought. You're kind of like, well, I think I would actually survive. And not to say it's something you would look forward to, but you would have done some sort of pre-thought, pre-planning potentially, to give yourself that opportunity to say, this is a thing, I've prepared for it, this is what I think my next action is going to be. And sometimes, as I mentioned, like, it's a struggle to get people to do that. And I assume that fear would be part of that particular struggle, because they just don't want to contemplate that just yet. The thought of actually leaning into what the potential outcomes or consequences could be are just a little bit too onerous. Do you see that type and style of resistance or hesitation from certain leaders?
In terms of kind of focusing a little bit too much on the severity of the consequence than in terms of actually like the real logic and realism of a situation. I think
Yeah,
f- fear magnifies the negative. It is not real. It creates an imaginary world where the worst thing that you ever think that could happen happens, but you haven't really processed what the worst thing could be. So you just think that it's terrible and going to be kind of like life and career ending, when really it isn't. Fear basically causes us to lose faith in ourselves. It's like the antithesis of confidence, where we ultimately think we're not going to be okay. We forget that we've gotten jobs before. We forget that we actually are a subject matter expert in our field. We forget that we've had conflict in relationships and been okay and it's been fine. Like we forget that we've disagreed with a manager in the past. It is a very strange place to be mentally, that can be it feels real, but is also very fake.
yeah, and we can get very, very, very creative about the stories that we tell ourselves, and that's certainly another conversation for another day. So, in terms of the book Becoming Fearless, What was the inspiration behind it, and what was your journey like during the actual writing process?
Yeah, the inspiration was actually my audience. So I started a podcast series called Fearless Fridays on my Live Fearlessly podcast, and it would be 2 to 3 minute snippets of living fearlessly. And everyone just said, wow, that made a real difference. That really resonated. I just needed that 2, 3 minutes. I feel empowered for the day. And I did it for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And I was like, there's a book here. This is how I believe people need to live their life. This is the core of self-leadership, which is how I work with my clients. You're the most important leader in your life. Well, to be the most important leader, you have to live fearlessly. And so then I took all those podcasts. I kind of picked the ones that were most important for personal and professional. I had to pick a new format. I had to edit them and make sure that they could be like used for a book. And lo and behold, that's hopefully helping people become a little bit more fearless. The book writing process is arduous for sure. It takes a lot more time than you think. I was like, oh, I have it here. It'll be done in a couple of months. It took like 2 years,
Yeah.
but hopefully it created a piece of evergreen content that can be relevant throughout life.
Yeah, and that's the key, isn't it? I loved when you said evergreen there. There's been times in the past where I've done leadership classes, management classes, communications classes, things like that, and I've made the point of emphasizing to the students, this is one of the, like the learner manual or the student manual. This is one of the ones that should not be gathering dust on a shelf. Maybe the other more expertise or niche areas in terms of cost management or risk management or stuff like that, you learn the process and you can move on and use it. But this is something you should be revisiting at some point in the future as a refresher, as a reminder. It will resonate with you differently at different points in your journey as you're moving forward. What types and styles of feedback have you had from the book thus far?
So the book's written in a unique way because I learn in a unique way. When I was trying to build confidence and explore life, I would resonate with the passage in something, and then that passage would become a reflection prompt for a journal,
Yeah.
and it would become something that I would go do, become like a test. And that's how change happens. Change happens through experiential learning. You learn it in applied learning theory. It was all part of my doctorate of education. And it was interesting that that's how I grew as a human. And that's how I ended up figuring out how people learn. So the book is written in 65 different strategies. Each strategy is its own page with a quote that I feel really resonates with that specific area. And each section offers something to do to work on this area if it resonates with you. And so the goal is really to flip through the book. You can read it front to back if you want, but to find a passage that aligns to a fear that you're facing, and then to go take action on it for a week or 2 weeks or a month. And then pick a different one, because your different parts of the book are going to resonate different parts in your life. So people will reach out and be like, oh, Ben, this passage on having pride in your work, showing up and be proud each and every single day made a big difference to my level of happiness. Someone will reach out and say, oh, this idea that work is never supposed to be over, this idea that I'm always supposed to have enough work for job security, but also because that's the way that work has been created, made me create an extra boundary in life. That was really wonderful. Thank you. Yeah. So they'll kind of share those little personal stories and snippets with me. And then some people will just say, I read the book. It was really empowering. I appreciate it. I'm going to read it again every so often.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do love that, the structure that you have where you could literally just, if you have a spare 10, 15 minutes one day, flip through, stop at a specific random point, read it, and then just have a think. Have I taken action? Have I done anything about that? How do I feel about this? How much knowledge or experience do I have in that particular thing as well? So from a consuming perspective, I should say, it's not arduous, where sometimes I think we've probably all had those books where you're like, I really want to read it, and then you pick it up or you look at it virtually, or even if you're listening to it audio, and it will say 12 and a half hours audio, and you're thinking, oh, that's a lot, or it's really literally physically very heavy. Others, it's 700 pages, you're thinking, oh my word, I can't do this. Whereas the kind of the bite-sized parts, of intentionally keeping it page per page has been it's certainly a really good way to consume, because my personal reading style, if I sit down and I go, I'm going to read one chapter, and then I flick through and the chapter is 12 or 13 pages long, I'm thinking, do you know what? Maybe I won't. Maybe I just don't have time right now. I'll make some time a little bit later because I do want to consume it in one sitting. Whereas the shorter part hopefully holds the attention span as such. And in terms of that writing style, is that your preference in terms of consuming content?
Yeah, very much so. I am a skills-based learner. Give me something that I can practically apply. Now, even when I'm going to do a workshop I've done for 5 years, I'll go download 10 podcasts on it. I'll go look up little snippets of information like I consume on a specific topic. I don't need a 300 novel to learn 2 or 3 points. Now, there's some benefit to that. That's why the writing style exists, because it creates an environment and a universe around you related to that topic. But I'd rather that universe be filled with good information. Hence why I kind of dive into a specific problem that I'm trying to solve through a bunch of different sources at any given point in time. But so when I evolve, when I grow, when I learn, short answer is yes. But then you take that information, you go do something with it, which is the main goal.
Yeah, it's not just passive consumption to say that was fun, cool, walk away. I keep saying if I'm doing any consulting work or even speaking, it's such like don't ever leave the scene of a conversation, an interaction, a meeting, whatever it is, without taking some sort of action, even if that action is not a formal, you will do this, I will do that, we will get together and figure that part out. It could be something mentally where you say, I'm going to write that down and I'm actually going to speak to someone about that. I'm going to do a little bit more research. I'm going to, take some sort of forward momentum on that too, because there's so much rich information around us all day, every day that I have this vision of us just walking around with waterproof coats on and all this wonderful value add information just bounces off us and rolls down our jackets and things like that. And we're kind of like, oh, look at that. And I'm just going to rub that away. And then, and then you move on and you wonder why you're not making progress or you're not changing anything that would be meaningful for you to change. What would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned through your journey with fear and fearlessness to this point in your life, Ben?
I think I've said it a few different times today that fear is just information. I think we give way too much credit to emotions, all of them.
Yeah.
Happiness, sadness, love, joy, hate, fear. And we feel them and then we make them real. And we have the ability to pause and to choose. It's harder at times than others. But if we believe we have the ability to choose and we take responsibility and we're accountable, and so that also empowers us to kind of really have a little bit more control over ourselves and our life. I'd say almost total control over the things that you can control, which is yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. It so resonates. During my coaching training a number of years back, they had said your thoughts manifest into your feelings, which manifest into your actions. And I always had the first two mixed up. I had them flipped the other way around. I thought the feeling was the thing that influenced your thoughts, which then would then just essentially say you actually don't have control there. Your mind is going to do, your mind and your feelings and your emotions are going to do this thing, and then they're going to puke some stuff out to you, and you're going to try and sift through it and use some usable things to then say, right, this is the best that I can do. When that was flipped, for me, it really resonated. I didn't have the saying or the terminology you're using in terms of it's just information. I will absolutely use that with your permission going forward to say that's definitely what it is. And then you get to choose what you do with that information. So I'm glad that you've emphasized that again. And I will certainly make a point of doing that on the show notes as well. So as you know, this is called The Best You interview series. And I take this opportunity with every guest to ask them what is one regular practice that Dr. Benjamin Ritter employs on a regular basis that gives him the best opportunity to be the best version of himself.
Every morning, I stand in front of my red light for 10 minutes and I read a passage in a book. I think it's called like Unleash the Power Within or something by Deepak Chopra. It's like 7 different principles. I'm going to get that book wrong. I'll basically read a book that resonates, and then I spend the rest of the time saying out loud my visions that I have for my business, for my relationships, for my partner, and for myself. And it's just one liner. I guide people to become fearless in their careers and their life. I help them feel empowered and accountable. I am a patient and focused and caring and supportive and health, driven human. I use patience a lot. I'll be patient with my friends, with my spouse. I will be supportive of, like, you basically say these things and wow, does the world listen to you?
Wonderful. Absolutely incredible. Before I let you go, Ben, where can people find out more about you and find out more about the book?
Yeah, the book is Becoming Fearless. Find that on Amazon. Please leave a review if you check it out. It's actually everywhere. It's on Spotify. It's on Audible. It's actually in libraries. So if you have a local library, you can go request it, and they'll be able to get you the ebook, the paperback, or the Audible version, or audio version. Pretty cool. And it's a good way to support authors as well if you like their stuff. And you can go to liveforyourselfconsulting.com, which is where all of my material is at. Live for Yourself Consulting. And I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn, Dr. Benjamin Ritter. So pick one of those things and get started.
Excellent. Ben, thank you very, very much. I was looking forward to this conversation and I had an absolute ball. Thank you very, very much for taking the time to come on the show today.
Yeah, it was a billion trillion amazing things. So I appreciate the conversation today.
Do you know what? Actually, literally, before you said earlier you want to try and find out where it came from, I was trying to think about it. I recall my mum saying it, and way, way back in the day, and I thought that was it was a really nice, I wouldn't say quirky thing to say, but it was just something that was a little bit different, and I guess maybe in my latter years, somewhat quantifiable to say. I don't want to say thanks very much or thank you so much or anything like that. I want to give you a number that's a big number that shows you how much I appreciate. So I don't say thanks a million to everyone, So if anybody's out there saying you don't say that to me, that's because you haven't reached that echelon yet.
That's so beautiful. It like represents the quirkiness, your gratitude, your thanks, like a variety of other things I imagine. And I appreciate being in the million bucket.
You're a good man. Thanks again.
Thanks, Gary.